Hello everyone, this is Frank Robinson, your host for the NJBIA Government Affairs podcast, Take on Trenton, where your government affairs team talks about the issues that are affecting the businesses in the state of New Jersey, and we give you our take on what's happening in the state capitol that affects the bottom line of your business. We also take on those special interests that are really not that much in favor of the businesses being successful right now, and it could be government officials, it could be other special interest groups, and I'm very proud and happy to have with me today Vice President for Government Affairs here at NJBIA, Andrew Musick, who handles the budget, taxation matters, and also economic development. And we're taping this show on July 1st, which is the beginning of the new 2020 fiscal year. Yesterday, Governor Murphy signed a $38.7 billion budget into effect, and we're here to talk about that budget and how it's going to affect you in the business community. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Frank. Thanks for having me back.
We had Andrew here in March, right after the governor introduced his budget to the legislature for the first time, and we talked about what might happen over the course of the next few months, and here we are 4 months later. So, Andrew, what happened with the state budget?
Yeah, so, Governor Murphy proposed his budget back in March. After that, the legislative budget committees, both in the Senate and the Assembly, they took public testimony from members of the public, as well as, the different departments came in. The Treasurer came in both April and then again in May to provide her revenue estimates and updates. The revenue updates in May were very, very good. The April gross income tax revenues came in, they met the projections, which were pretty high, and the corporate business tax revenues, as we've been keeping our eyes on, have really performed and I'll say overperformed projections, projections that were set back in March when the governor first unveiled his budget.
Okay, so one of the things, the big news that affected the business community was that this budget does not include an expansion of the gross income tax to income over $1 million. Right. That's been important to us because a lot of our members file their business taxes through the income tax, and New Jersey is somewhat notorious for not having a lot of deductions for business in that tax. So what are some of the other proposals that didn't make it to this budget?
Yeah, so first thing I want to touch on a little bit was just that this budget that was passed was largely similar to what Governor Murphy proposed back in March, and then really what the legislature sent him on June 20th. It's a $38.7 billion budget, as you mentioned, supported by about $16.5 billion in gross income tax revenue, about $10.2 billion in sales tax revenue, and about $3.3 billion in corporate business tax revenue.
It's a lot of money.
It is. And you asked me to touch on on four of the things that really were not included at the end. The first one you already mentioned, was the gross income tax expansion. The Governor Murphy's proposal would have taken the top gross income tax rate, which is currently 10.75%, and expanded that to all income over $1 million. Currently, that's only applicable to all income over $5 million. The second item that wasn't included in the budget was a corporate responsibility fee. This would have imposed a $150 fee per employee on an employer that has over 50 employees that currently take state Medicaid benefits. The third piece was increased fees or assessments on opioid manufacturers or wholesalers. And the last piece was $28.5 million that was not included for the Community College Opportunity Grant. You'll remember Governor Murphy proposed $28.5 million more towards that program when he first unveiled his budget back in March.
Okay, so they are not in the budget that he signed into law.
They are not, correct.
So what are some of the highlights of the things that are included in that $38+ billion?
Yes, I'll start with NJ Transit funding. Governor Murphy proposed $25 million to be added to the NJ Transit funding back in March. The legislature agreed with that, but on top of it, they actually added $50 million more in their funding for a total of $75 million more. So the final budget that was signed, NJ Transit received about $2.4 billion total. Wow. The second piece that was included in the budget.
Let me stop you there for a second. Why is that important to the business community in New Jersey?
I mean, the business community really needs a comprehensive and an effective transportation network, and especially mass transit, to make sure that their employees, can get to their place of business, that they can move around, on time and efficiently in this state, and also for the residents of this state to travel, the different towns in this state, and even some of the cities, just to the north of us or to the south of us.
Well, I just wanted to let our viewers know that this past Friday, the president and CEO, relatively new president and CEO of New Jersey Transit, came to his first ELC meeting, and those are our employer legislative committees that meet on a regular basis all around the state at the county level. And he's made a commitment that he wants to travel around and interact with the business community, talk about how he's going to spend all that extra money. And so keep an eye on the publications from NJBIA. We'll be bringing you Kevin Corbett to your local ELC over the course of the next couple of months. So what else has he got? What we got?
So there's a $3.8 billion public pension payment that was as he proposed back in March. There's about $65 million included to help offset the minimum wage increase for healthcare workers and child care workers in the state. And finally, there's a total surplus of just over $1.2 billion, and that's sort of split into two accounts. There's $875 million, which is included in the general fund balance, and then there's a $401 million that's included in the surplus revenue fund, or the rainy day fund, as some of us in Trenton, it's better known.
There's some more things I want to talk to you about the budget, but since you brought up the minimum wage and pension, let's talk about those two things for a moment. Today, as I mentioned, is July 1st, and today is when the first increase in New Jersey's minimum wage is happening.
Right.
It's gone from I believe it's $8.85 an hour up to $10 an hour now in New Jersey for certain categories of employees. Andrew talked about some of the offsets that may happen as we go forward, and right now in the budget there's that $65 million for medical workers. We had a conversation with the Senate President, the Senate Minority Leader, Republican Leader Tom Kaine recently. We had Senator Sweeney on earlier, and also Vin Gopal about this issue. And there's going to be a big impact in New Jersey, and there's been concern on it. I know you and your colleagues here at NJBIA have been working on the minimum wage. What are you hearing from our members regarding minimum wage and how it's going to affect their business? Yeah,
I think it's something that they're seriously concerned about. It is being phased in over a number of years. We were successfully able to work with the legislature to get it phased in a way that the businesses are have a little bit more predictability in terms of the increase that they're going to see on their salary lines. But it is something that they're concerned about, and it's something that upstairs in the Government Affairs Department we're really going to take note of and measure the impact that it's having on our members here and all the businesses in the state. A lot of other cities that have imposed this. There have been a number of studies that have come after that, and that's something that we're going to make sure is that we try to get real data on how that's impacting not only our membership but the broader business community here in the state.
Appreciate that. And you also mentioned the pension payment. Mm-hmm. It's my understanding that's the largest pension payment that's been made in state history.
Yep, that is the largest pension payment that's been made. And we're on that 10th scale until we ramp up to make sort of that final, not the final pension payment. But once we start to meet our ARC funding amount of pension. And
one of the things that we talked about with some of my previous guests was the whole effort on the part of, especially State Senate, but also the General Assembly too, of tackling that whole pension issue. Was there much else discussion during this whole budget period regarding how to tackle the pension problem?
There really wasn't too much more of a discussion on that during this budget cycle, but that's something that we're going to continue to push for. We know that tackling sort of the public pension predicament here in the state, as well as escalating health benefit costs, that is a problem in this state, and that is driving up the budget costs each and every year. Mm-hmm. And it's something that we need to address. We need to address these structural issues that here in New Jersey, and that I think is really what will help New Jersey get into a better financial position, is if we can help to address those.
All part of the path to progress.
Absolutely.
Well, and you mentioned before about the amount of money that the governor was going to put into surplus, and so we have a pretty hefty chunk of money going into surplus in this budget, along with the first contribution into the rainy day fund in quite some time.
Right.
Tell our viewers what the difference is between having a surplus and a rainy day fund.
Sure. So you have about $875 million in the general fund balance. So that money is unrestricted. It's undesignated a surplus, and it really can be used For the legislature, anything they see fit. Any way that they see fit, money that's left over at the end of the year, they can use that for programs or different initiatives. Whereas that rainy day fund really can only be used when there's a significant drop off in state revenues or if a true budget emergency exists. And as you mentioned, this was the first contribution into that rainy day fund in about 11 years.
11 years.
Yeah, it was emptied. It was completely depleted in fiscal year 2009 as we were dealing with the effects of of the recession.
Oh, okay.
And state revenues were lagging behind projections.
Okay. And one thing that didn't surprise too many people yesterday, when the governor did sign the budget, averting a state government shutdown, which some people thought would happen, is that he did in fact use his authority to line item a number of spending issues. And I've always said, and lots of people have said, that they believe that the governor's greatest power in the state of New Jersey is his ability to certify how much revenue we're going to have. Right. But talk about the items that he did line item veto.
Yeah, so the governor line item $48.5 million from the budget this year. So one of the first things was a $38 million of a proposed $48 million that would have gone to the study and implementation of shared services and school district consolidation. So that leaves about $10 million for that program. He also eliminated $5 million for the Cooper University Hospital Vulnerable Communities Access to Care Grant, $4 million for school choice, $1 million that was set to go to the East Orange General Hospital, and $500,000 for a workforce study in Camden that would have been done in consultation with Rutgers Camden.
So I'm a little curious. The governor line item vetoed money for East Orange Hospital.
Yeah.
East Orange Hospital is in the lieutenant governor's hometown.
Right.
What's the backstory to that?
I don't know how much of a backstory there is, but the governor did make note that there is funding for the East Orange General Hospital in a separate appropriation within the state budget this year.
So they're going to get their money.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And he did mention when he was doing these line items that it was really, these line items were things that there wasn't a clear justification for, or that the appropriation was found somewhere else in the state budget.
I'm personally concerned with that issue because my own mother was born in East Orange, New Jersey. Even though everybody thinks that I always am a Jersey City guy, I am, but my mother was born in East Orange. Okay, let's move along. The governor also, besides line item vetoing about $50 million, he also put money in quotes into a reserve account or a reserve fund, $250 million. What's that all about?
Yeah, so the governor issued about $235 million in funding, putting it into a reserve account, let's say. And this is money for different programs or different initiatives that he wasn't sure if the state revenue was going to be there to be able to fund those programs. So what he did make mention of is that that he's going to put this $235 million into a reserve account, and then throughout the year, the administration will take a look at how revenues are trending, and then perhaps they'll be able to spend that money. But he made note of 3 different ways that money could ultimately be spent. And one of them is that savings that were included in the budget would ultimately materialize. The second would be that revenues would overperform or run higher than projections. And then that third piece is if there was additional revenue or new revenue that was authorized by the legislature, then these programs would be able to be funded. And there really hasn't been a list issued yet of the spending that's been frozen, but he noted in his press conference yesterday that these were initiatives and proposals that were done by both the administration, by the front office, as well as the legislature. So it wasn't just any one house's proposals, it was really proposals that came from both his front office as well as the legislature.
Now this is a little bit unusual, but it's not unprecedented. This has happened before?
Right. Yeah, I believe the last time it happened was in 2016. Governor Christie did a similar thing, but it had more to do with savings that were anticipated to be found in the state budget. And actually, Governor Murphy makes note of that in his executive order.
Okay, so
putting this funding in a sort of a reserve account.
So the people that are hoping to get a piece of that $235 million through the course of the fiscal year shouldn't get nervous yet.
Well, I mean, it's really going to depend on where revenues come in. Okay. I would say no. There's plenty. There's a lot of time. We start the new budget cycle. New budget year starts today, so it's really going to depend how these revenues come in the next year.
Well, in terms of those revenues, too, you kept us here at BIA very well informed throughout the springtime on the various estimates. And one of the surprising things to many people was the amount of money that the corporate business tax was bringing in. Last year, Andrew led the fight in the business community against raising the corporate business tax. Unfortunately, it did go up. And it raised a lot more money than people thought, didn't it? How much?
Yeah, I think it was initially projected to raise about 47% more than in fiscal year 19. Than in fiscal year 18. Those projections were actually increased when the treasurer gave her testimony before the budget committees in April, and ultimately the last estimate we have was running about almost 100% over the FY18. So the FY19 year that we just completed, those corporate business tax revenues came in almost double the year prior. And we'll have a little bit more information on that come mid-July, when we get the final June revenue estimates.
So that's about $4 billion?
Yeah.
Well, when the whole debate was going on, we talked earlier about raising the income tax on people earning more than $1 million a year. A lot of our members, once again, small business people that pay their business taxes through the income tax, and other small businesses that actually pay their taxes, and large businesses, through the corporate business tax, were saying, Frank, tell the governor and tell the legislature we gave at the office. And the fact that we have a $1 billion plus surplus, can afford to put money into the rainy day fund, makes a lot of people pause and say, why do we need to raise taxes at a time when we're actually raising a lot of money through the taxes? But so, are there any other issues or any other items that happened over the course of the next day or two that you can enlighten our members on?
Yeah, so one of the things I wanted to make note of was that Governor Murphy clearly took care of the budget yesterday, signed the budget, issued his line item veto. He also signed a bill that we've been supportive of for a number of years now. This is a bill that would expand the angel investor tax credit here in the state. It helps to inject venture capital into this state, create and really sustain that innovation ecosystem that we want to create here in New Jersey. For the companies that are those small, those medium-sized startup companies, those innovation companies that really help New Jersey's economy grow. And this the bill that he ultimately signed, really it took the angel investor tax credit, which is currently at 10%, it doubled that to 20% for all companies. And then if you're for a women or a minority-owned business, or a business that's located in a distressed area within the state, that tax credit could get up to 20%, or excuse me, 25%.
Well, we know that you've been working very hard on that bill for quite some time, so we compliment and thank the governor and the legislature for doing that, but we also thank Andrew for his leadership on that issue.
Thanks, Ray.
Now, also, in terms of investing and the angel investors are very, very important to the innovation economy and lots of other businesses here in New Jersey. There's all been this big debate going on right now about the state's tax incentive programs. New Jersey joined many other states about 20 years ago in putting together some programs that would give grants and then ultimately credits to companies for either relocating to New Jersey. We had a lot of folks come over from New York City in the last 20 years and go to the Gold Coast of Hudson County. We've had a lot of people who were enticed to come across the Pennsylvania border, and we've also had a lot of people who were thinking about leaving, decided to stay in New Jersey. Been very controversial about how much has been given out, how it was given out. We know that it was, and update me, it was supposed to go out of business like yesterday or today. What's the status? So
as of today, both the Grow New Jersey program and the ERG program, they expired as of today. We were working closely with the legislature. There was a bill that would have extended those two programs by 7 months, their expiration dates, really the application deadline of when you would have to file your application for one of those tax credits. So there was a bill that would have extended it for 7 months through the end of January 2020. The governor has vowed that he is going to veto that bill. He has not acted upon it yet, but clearly that's something that we're concerned about with our membership here. We think that economic development incentives are part of the economic development toolkit here in the state. It's a great way to bring companies here, to retain companies that are it's a hyper-competitive environment out there. Other states are constantly trying to win our businesses that are here in the state and bring them to their state. So it's a way for us to keep businesses here and also bring businesses from other states here. And it's really all about jobs and capital investment. And we are totally supportive of the proper oversight of these programs, right, the proper transparency of these programs, and I think it's only right that they're recalibrated or retooled. Since they were last done so in 2013, the economy is much different. But I think it is something that there's a lot of agreement between a lot of legislators here in New Jersey, as well as the front office, that tax incentives do need to be part of our toolkit here in New Jersey.
And there's going to be hearings over the summer, both on the part of the legislature and the governor's right, office on this. So yeah, everybody stand by and we'll see what happens. Well, Andrew, I want to thank you for being here today.
Thanks, Frank.
Appreciate it very much. Want to let everybody know that we have a new mug. NJBIA's Take on Trenton. We want to thank Risa Castro, from one of our staff people, for making these up. Appreciate them. I'm going to be presenting them to all of my guests. Most importantly, I want to urge everybody to tell your friends and neighbors to take a look at all the different kinds of social media and information provided to the business community by NJBIA. We have a daily BT, our Business Today, that we email out to our members. We have the great New Jersey Business magazine that we produce. We have a capital memo that the Government Affairs Department puts out every weekend. We have a number of different podcasts, including one run by our producer and director, Vinny Civitello, who I want to thank for him producing this show. He's got his own podcast along with Kate Conroy called Other People's Business, I believe, and you can get that on YouTube and lots of different social media channels, and so take a look at those. So on behalf of the Government Affairs Department here at NJBIA, this is Frank Robinson signing off for Take on Trenton.